Super excited about this conversation. This panel brings together voices from entertainment, sports, conservation, and behavioral science to explore a positive shift in our food systems and driving a change toward plant-based eating. So let's get started by introducing ourselves. I'm Claire Thompson. I'll be your moderator this morning or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I'm an associate editor at the independent environmental news site Grist, covering climate, justice, and solutions. And we have with us today Dotsie Bausch. Dotsie is an Olympic silver medalist turned leading plant-based advocate and public health changemaker. As the founder of Switch for Good, she has driven landmark policy wins and successfully pressured major brands like Starbucks to eliminate upcharges for non-dairy milks. Remember when that used to be a thing? Dotsie combines elite athletic credibility with powerful advocacy, and she's recognized by ProVeg International as the leader behind plant-forward changes to the US dietary guidelines. We also have Carrie Hutchison. Carrie leads brand and marketing at Rewild, which protects and restores the wild. She spearheads Rewild Your Fridge, which connects everyday food choices to biodiversity through pop culture activations at Lollapalooza, the Hollywood Climate Summit, Climate Weeks, and even NBC Universal through a partnership tied to the film Wicked for Good. We've also got Cyle Zezo. Cyle is a former TV network exec and unscripted producer and founded Reality of Change to support sustainable storytelling in entertainment, including the role of plant-forward diets. He consults directly with major studios to highlight sustainability on screen, has developed targeted storytelling advice and tip sheets, and co-launched the Greener Reality Pledge with the global nonprofit RARE and a coalition of 30 plus US reality studios and production companies. And finally, Juli Schulz is the VP of Strategy at the Better Food Foundation and works on advancing the global movement toward a plant-rich food system with behavioral science. With over 15 years of experience in sustainability, she has worked with organizations such as the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and Gardein Foods. Juli designs behavioral science training programs for the foundation. She also serves on the advisory board of the Hollywood Climate Summit. So shout out to that. We're so excited to be here as part of LA Climate Week. And this panel is so accomplished. I mean, we've got expertise on the data and behavioral science side behind food system change, policy, media, narrative, conservation. And we're here to talk about a positive shift. We're definitely going to talk about some wins, some progress, some forward momentum. I think to start out, we also have to acknowledge some of the political and cultural headwinds at the moment. Many of you here in the audience might have seen recent headlines about plant-based restaurants closing, kind of the burst of the vegan business bubble. You might be inundated with protein maxing content, really pushing red meat and dairy. So before we get into the shift, I think we should talk a little bit about what the plant-based movement is kind of up against. And Dotsie, I'd love to start with you.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, it's been a rough one, y'all. It's felt really bumpy and I think very disappointing to many of us who may have felt like we were in the winner's circle in 2018, 2019, and that was because so many people were just excited and curious about eating plants and what that meant and how they were going to taste and how they were going to feed their families better. And there was just a lot of buzz and a lot of excitement and verve. And the the other side, I guess I'll say, because I think at this point it feels like a cage match to me, and pardon all of the athletic references that may come out of my mouth during this, but it feels like we're in a bit of a battle right now against the big giants of big ag, kind of known colloquial as big meat and dairy, and so they fought back, right? I mean, they were not just going to let that unfold and plant-based foods rise to the top and take over their market share. So about 4 years ago, interestingly enough, two of America's largest veterinary pharmaceutical companies were the principal participants that created an ongoing campaign that we're still seeing flourishing today to undermine alternatives to conventional meat. It suggests the data suggests that it was Elanco, who's a spinoff of Eli Lilly, and Zoetis, a spinoff of Pfizer. And why do they have such a stake in it? Because about 80% of their sales are antibiotics to farmed animals. And so they got together with a public relations firm and started this ultra processed food myth, if you will, which has really hammered our sector, our plant-based sector, both from a for-profit and a nonprofit side. And really, there's a aspect to it that's very frustrating in so many ways, but especially because it was the alt meats that they went after, so say Beyond and Impossible, and nobody ever was delivering those burgers as a salad, right? It's not like, oh, this is the healthiest thing you could ever put in your body. It's awesome. It is a replacement for traditional meat, and much healthier than the hormone and antibiotic laden toxic meat and dairy industry. So significantly healthier, but none of us ever build it as, this is like the most healthy thing you can put in your body. But that's what they acted like was said, and really went after that hard, and using social media and influencers and movies and TV. I mean, it's quite everywhere, and they have a lot of money, and so understanding what has been behind that drop, I think, is important for all of us when we know that it's really just the almighty dollar that's behind their smear campaign.
Yeah. And Carrie, I'd love for you to jump into about sort of like how food shows up in the climate conversation or sometimes
Or
doesn't.
doesn't. Yeah, thank you, Clara and Dotsie. That was great. A very good overview of what's happening right now. I just, from the conservation side, I want to paint a little picture for you about kind of the imbalance that's happening on the planet. And it's a way to visualize it is that if you put all of the terrestrial animals, from humans to livestock to wild animals like squirrels and rhinos and kangaroos, and put them on a scale, 98%, more than 98%, would be the humans and livestock, and fewer than 2% would be wild animals. And this is such an imbalance that it kind of like, I would hope, supersedes how you feel about meat and dairy. It's just, it's mind blowing, but it's like our planet has truly become a pasture and feedlot, as opposed to nature, which gives us so much. And yes, the almighty dollar does rule the day, but you can't eat money. You can't breathe money, and you can't drink it. So, just a reminder to bringing it back to kind of the reality of the situation. And a lot of people don't make the connection between biodiversity loss and extinctions, and also pandemics, which come out of wildlife and habitat being encroached upon. They don't make that connection to what's in their fridge and what they're eating. And unfortunately, as climate coverage tends to shrink and not be talked about as much, only about like 1% of climate coverage even addresses the food issue and the agriculture and big ag and diet issue. When as individuals, it's like the top thing you can do to protect biodiversity is to limit or reduce or completely eliminate meat and dairy from your diet. So just things that aren't really being addressed as explicitly as really the crisis calls for.
Yeah. Yeah. Food is something we all think about, interact with, hopefully multiple times a day. And uh, this being LA Climate Week, I think we want to jump into talking about how the entertainment industry and media can play a role in kind of normalizing different food behaviors, making different foods attractive, changing the way we think about food to a degree. And I know, Dotsie, you pointed out how much PR has been spent on a certain narrative about food. So let's talk about shifting that. And Cyle, I think you would be a great person to jump in on this.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a great point from Dotsie about exactly as you said, Claire, how much money big meat and dairy and apparently the pharmaceutical industries have poured into opposing this message that we all obviously want to get out there and that will, have a big impact on the environment and people's health and all of that. And I think that one important takeaway is that our message is resilient because it's based on facts and you can't deny the facts. And at the end of the day, like people want to be healthy, they want to help the planet and save the world. That's why we have so many films about saving the world. It's something that people, lean into a lot. And I don't think that most people want to hurt animals as well. So from every angle, the facts are on our side. And we've actually seen that just by presenting plant-based foods in entertainment, just in a positive light, without even preaching about any of these other factors or benefits, um, people light up to that and it resonates with them and it increases their intention to eat more plant-based foods and their perception, their positive perceptions of plant-based foods. So specifically, I'm referring to a study that Reality of Change did with the global environmental nonprofit Rare doing much of the heavy lifting on it. Where we took a show that I produced. I greenlit it when I was still at the CW network and then moved into a producer role after the fact. We did a pretty comedic, family-friendly cooking competition show. For various reasons, the entire show unfortunately could not be plant-based. There's a whole, like number of reasons I can go into why that happened and why that is, which we can talk about at some point. But we did have a plant-based challenge on the episode and on one of the episodes. And in that episode, we had in addition to that, a non-plant-based challenge. So what we did in the testing is we took that plant-based challenge, we screened it for an audience, we compared it to the results with a control group who watched the non-plant-based challenge, and we saw like what the effects were on viewers. And the results showed that it increased beliefs in viewers that reducing meat was not only the right thing to do, but it also increased their confidence in their ability to reduce meat. It increased their confidence in their ability to produce like delicious, healthy plant-based meals. And it also increased their perception that more people were doing this, and it was something that they would be expected to do as well. So that led to an increased intention to eat more plant-based, and critically, it also enhanced the perceived benefits of plant-based eating and did not reduce the entertainment value of the show at all. So we didn't preach; we just showed the plant-based foods in a positive light, and that had a massive impact. So I think that like there is a lot to be upset about right now and concerned about. And obviously, we're up against these like mega corporations and industries that do not want us to succeed. But if we're operating from a position of defensiveness, I think we're also giving more power to meat and dairy when, as I said at the top, the facts are on our side. And if we operate from a position of confidence and strength, I think that context registers with viewers.
Yeah, I love that. I cannot tell a lie. I love reality TV.
Mm.
But I also would love to hear, Carrie, about your work on some of these like cultural touchstones like Lollapalooza.
Yeah, just building on what Kyle said, it doesn't really work or help to preach, but just kind of showing up where people already are is a win, I think. So we started working with Lollapalooza about 3 years ago. And from year one, the team that manages Lollapalooza C3 has been incredibly supportive of bringing Rewild into the fold. They give us a place to exhibit on the festival grounds, and we worked with their vendor management team, who manages all of the food vendors to create a row of plant-based vendors, because everything Rewild does is plant-based just since we started. Every event we host, every donor dinner, any work retreat or gathering of my colleagues, we all eat plant-based. So we worked with them on that, and their big thing was let's make it taste really good. And it was put in a really great spot right by our booth, and we talked a bit about it to people who came by, but mostly it was just a place for somebody to get something to eat. And we did have people come over and say, I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan forever. Whenever I go to festivals, I have to bring my own food. I love this. But other people were just like, I'm hungry and this is awesome. So whatever works, right? And we leaned in on the Rewild Your Fridge campaign. So I should talk a little bit about that. Rewild Your Fridge is a way to connect the biodiversity story with the food story. And the reason we don't talk much about there's no vegan in the name or there's no plant-based in the name is because we didn't really want to get into and I know we will in this discussion. But we wanted to base it in something that was very familiar and relatable to people. And most people interact with a refrigerator on a daily basis, often multiple times a day. So we built it all around the fridge. So last year we took that campaign a step beyond where we had taken it previously and built a traveling activation, which is a fridge. And we brought it to Lollapalooza and filled it with donated goods from sustainable brands and had a video that people could watch. And then they'd take a quiz. And depending on how they did on the quiz, they'd get a prize from the fridge, with the top scores being from the freezer section, the premium giveaways, and but everybody got a prize. And I'm all about bribery to get a point across. I'm a parent of teenagers, but it was really satisfying to see the big line that kept forming. There's the T-Mobile booth and all the big sponsors there that had lines, but so did we. And people were really excited about it. They enjoyed the experience. It was beautiful. It was designed by a vegan artist from DC named Rose Jaffe. So the thing I heard the most when people were walking away from it was, I didn't know that. And it wasn't, oh, I just got a lecture. Oh, I'm not going, it wasn't defensive. It was just sort of, I didn't realize that. And then they would go to plant-based and get a really delicious vegan lunch. So it was a very fun way to interact with people. We had thousands of people come through, and we ended up taking that activation around the country. It went to San Francisco, LA, DC. And then because of connections made at the Hollywood Climate Summit, where we also had the fridge, we were invited to be part of the Green for Good campaign, which was part of the rollout for Wicked for Good. And that gave us a chance to talk about all kinds of ways to care for the planet, but with plant-based eating being one of those. And then the team at NBC Universal invited us to bring the fridge to the NBC Universal lot for employees to interact with. And they all had a really great time too. So I think if you make it fun and you celebrate it, and the video was that we made people watch wasn't preachy. It did get into some of the issues, but it was more about this is good for you. This is good for the planet. And here's some things that you should know and do what you want with it. But most people took away, a way to do something every day that can help protect wildlife and wild places and us as people. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love bringing the fun. Food is such a joyful thing. It's like, yeah, hopefully it is. And so entertainment and culture, like these are institutions that have a lot of reach. But I also want to talk a bit about systems change that happens in other institutions, maybe in subtler ways, like in schools, healthcare facilities. And Juli, I know you have some exciting wins to share about in that space.
Yeah, the nice thing is I get to talk about positive stories, and they're all positive climate stories and food stories. But first, so people realize over 50% of US meals are served outside the home. So this gives food service operators, restaurants, cafeterias, and event planners significant power to shape our food choices. So how do we make the best choice, the easiest choice in all of these food service settings? Well, that's where behavioral science comes in. Our advisory board member, Cass Sunstein, he co-authored a book called Nudge that frames these strategies that anyone can use. And what is a nudge? It's an intervention that gently steers individuals towards a desired action or behavior in a predictable way. So, for example, when you go to a hotel, they ask you to reuse the towels. That's a nudge. Netflix automatically plays the next episode. And then here in Los Angeles, they're using the nudges. There's 33 municipalities that have shifted their policies to offer 100% renewable power plans as the default. So using this nudge, it's very successful. If you want to read more, go to greenbydefault.org. There are many nudges. We advocate for five top food nudges, but really the one that's the most popular and the most successful is plant-based by default. And this is a simple way to serve plant-rich food as a default while preserving diners' freedom to opt in for animal products. This simple shift reduces emissions, improves health, saves money, and has little to no pushback. For those who are attending LA Climate Week, you may have noticed the plant-based default question on the RSVP for live events. So thanks to the team for adding that. And to the success stories, there's so many of them, but I'll talk about a few. We facilitate a network of over 40 NGOs working to shift diets and using these behavioral nudges in their work. And this movement is really happening, and it's happening all over in our local communities, fueled by volunteers, advocates, and these NGOs. The best success story that I have to talk about, and they just announced last month an update to it, was New York City's hospitals has just celebrated over 2.8 million plant-based meals served to patients since 2022 with their food service provider, Sodexo. In 2025, they served 700,000 plant-based meals to patients, and the results were astounding. They have 36% reduction in carbon emissions each year, and they reported a satisfaction rate of 98% for those who ate the plant-based meals. And the best part of that story is that they saved 59 cents per meal, which equates to over $413,000 a year. So that's one of my favorite stories. Sodexo also has brought that knowledge to universities. So you're seeing many universities adopting plant-based defaults. And they've added other nudges into their cafeterias. Many are student-led initiatives and many other nudges as well. I'll switch to coffee shops. There's many that serve oat milk as the default, including Blue Bottle, Birch Coffee, Stumptown, the University of Michigan, Pomona, University College of London, and many more. And to note, Blue Bottle achieved carbon neutrality in 2024. They were the first U.S. specialty coffee shop to introduce oat milk default program at scale, and they reduced their emissions of milk by 16%. Many coffee shops are realizing that 65% of their customers are lactose intolerant, especially diverse communities. So these practices really make sense. And then to switch over to cities, West Hollywood, Denver, Austin, many others have adopted plant-based default policies for their events or food service. And the County of Los Angeles and many other cities are working on plant-forward policies, thanks to the team at Mercy for Animals and many others who are championing this work. I want to throw out two examples of our students. We have run an internship program at the Better Food Foundation. Bang Nguyen, he moved his local Houston climate group to offer a plant-based default at a recent event. And UCLA student Sarah G. Dosanjh served a plant-based by default event for a sustainable food futures event on her campus. We keep a rapidly growing list of these nudge adoptions on our website. And I have to mention, this movement is fueled by many organizations and advocates and volunteers using these behavioral science strategies, including Greener by Default, New Roots, Plant Futures, Mercy for Animals, Forward Food, Plant-Based Treaty, and Dotsie and her team at Switch for Good as well.
Amazing. Yeah, and Dotsie, do you want to jump in? I know you've also worked on some policy wins in schools, and love to hear from you too.
Oh, Julie, that was fantastic. I'm glad, like, I'm happy now. It's really so many cool wins. We had a goal, was really just a dream, but it turned into a goal once we realized maybe we could potentially get there 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago, to end the 80-year-old cow's milk only mandate in our nation's schools. And as Julie just mentioned so eloquently, there is a massive food inequity, food justice issue with cow's milk. 70% of the global population can't even digest it, 35% of Americans. And so there were about 15 million children that participated in the National School Lunch Program who were suffering in silence, because it's not like, we hardly know those stats. I didn't know those stats when I was going through school. I am not lactose intolerant. But a lot of kiddos, a lot of stories that we have gathered now, how many kiddos were like, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't focus and test, because they're having this fluid from a cow at breakfast and lunch in the National School Lunch Program. So we ventured to end that and make it so plant-based milk could be offered in the school lunch line, right next to cow's milk, if the school so chooses to do. And if they choose not to, then a child can request it with just a note from their parent. It used to say they needed a note from a physician, which is a major hurdle for a lot of families and wasn't happening. So we opened up those floodgates, and we championed the bill through Congress for 3 years. I mean, in so many ups and downs and sideways and all sorts of ways. Had some Olympic athletes come lobby with me in Washington, and really telling their stories and gathering these very brave senators and representatives. And the bill passed in late December and was signed by the president in January. So we're headed out on a justice tour to educate all these schools, because I didn't know this, because I didn't think about it. But when Congress passes a bill, they don't advertise it. Actually, they pass bills almost every single day they're in session, which I didn't know that either. So it's up to us. It's up to all of us to inspire and empower your school next door, the teachers and the principals, to know that this passed and that they have freedom of choice now.
Wow, that's such a good point. Not just about the policy wins, but it's the stories we tell about the policy and how things are actually changing for people because of what happens in Congress. That's super exciting. And yeah, a lot of exciting wins that Julie shared as well. And Carrie kind of teased this earlier, but I think we do want to talk a bit about the language we use to describe food and what that can mean for different people in different contexts. We hear vegan, we hear plant-based, vegetarian, plant-forward. Julie, I'd love for you to dig in a little bit to the language question of it all.
I love talking about this because recently, we live in a time that's very polarizing. Language is happening everywhere. And different words can trigger different associations for different people. We know that. We like to say we like to meet people where they're at. Let me switch something really quick. So there we go. The term vegan and vegetarian can trigger unnecessary resistance due to the identity tied to those words. So, and young people increasingly don't identify. I'll tell you a quick story. I part-time teach at Otis College of Art and Design, and the students presented menu redesign to the dining director. And he, by accident, I think he learned a big lesson. He asked the students, how many of you are vegan or vegetarian? And the students all laughed and not one student raised a hand. And then afterwards I said, how many of you guys eat some of the plant-forward menu items in your cafeteria? And they all raised their hand. So we're seeing that across the board at the university level. And we like to say highlighting what plant-based food includes rather than what it lacks is an easy way to increase plant-based food choices. For example, using Mediterranean chickpea wrap instead of vegetarian wrap sounds a lot more delicious. And for storytellers, offer tasty titles and descriptions of plant-rich food, not that they're vegan or vegetarian. Instead, focus on taste, texture. Where's the recipe from? Is it, Mediterranean? Is it Mexican? So, and that just really levels the playing field and offering, delicious food.
Yeah, absolutely. Food is so fun to talk about. It's food. It's so much more
It
than
really is.
vegetarian. Yeah, yeah. Um, and as you pointed out, Julie, food is also very personal. It's tied up in identity, whether your identity may be vegetarian or someone who's lactose intolerant or someone who just hates beans, whatever. It's very personal. It has to do with culture, it intersects with race, nationality, religion. The way we eat, says so much about us. And so I think plant-based advocacy and storytelling that doesn't account for all those factors is missing out on an opportunity to reach more people more authentically. And Kyle, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this from working in a reality entertainment space, how the plant-based narrative can show up authentically and inclusively.
Yeah, sure thing. So you're absolutely right, Claire. So, like diverse, authentic casting in reality shows, but also character, development across any type of entertainment would have plant-based representation if we're going to be accurate. So, Julie and Dotsie obviously talked about widespread lactose intolerance. We also know it's a little bit of an older stat, so I got to find a more updated one, but we know that Black Americans have historically been almost 3 times as likely as the general population to be strict vegan or vegetarians. So that's a big thing that I don't think a lot of people know. Non-white Americans also have been more likely to reduce their meat consumption by double-digit percentages. The latest stat we have shows like 31% in a year reduce their meat consumption versus like 19% of white Americans. So I think there's these like preconceived notions about who's eating plant-based that aren't necessarily in line with reality. And then to expand beyond that, we of course have religions. We have Jainism, we have Buddhism, Hinduism, all major faiths that prioritize nonviolence in many respects and often have plant-forward diets. And then, Julie alluded to this with her story about her students. But if you're a programmer or a producer trying to reach key demos, 27% of Gen Z and millennials eat a plant-based diet most or all of the time. And that's relatively recent research, well past like the apparent declines we've seen in like the business landscape and all of that. Just from a couple of years ago. That's more than a quarter of millennial and Gen Z diners eating plant-based often or all of the time. That's insane. So that's a huge amount that if you're not having it show up on screen, um, you're not actually representing your viewership accurately. But we are seeing it show up on screen. We have plant-based guys on Love Island. We had a cast member, Aaron, last season, who was also in the UK version. We had other vegan cast members in the past on that show. The last season of Hell's Kitchen had Cara Marie, who was a vegan chef. She had a great scene where she beat a non-vegan man in arm wrestling, and then was very forward on camera about using that to dispel protein myths, which I loved. She's also been on Chopped and Beat Bobby Flay and Beachside Brawl. Recently, Property Brothers Under Pressure had an episode about a woman who teaches people to cook more plant-based foods. She learned to do it when her mom was ill, so it promotes plant-based as a healthy lifestyle choice. And then a really big one that I'm really personally excited about is Pinky Cole, who's the founder of Slutty Vegan, is the newest Real Housewife of Atlanta. So we're only one episode into that show as of today, but in that episode, she's identified either by others or by herself as vegan 3 times in the first episode. It's always positive, sometimes it's funny, it's always strong. It's just a fact about her. She's proud of it. And I'm really excited to see where the rest of the season goes with that. So we are seeing vegans and plant-based eaters show up across these shows. But I think that in order to be authentic, we'd actually see plant conscious casting and creative development. Because if these producers and these shows aren't showcasing vegans, they're not only like being inaccurate, and I'm using the word vegan and plant-based and all of that kind of interchangeably, but like if they're not doing that, it's inaccurate, but it's also a disservice to their viewers' health knowledge. It's obviously a disservice to the animals who are affected by this, and the planet's future. So it's just the most authentic and relevant thing you can do. As we saw earlier, it's like not only from an authenticity perspective, but also from an impact perspective. Because just showing these people and showing plant-based foods in a positive light, we know that it inspires viewers too and has an impact there.
Wow, this is extremely dangerous. I've never gotten into the Real Housewives franchise, and now I'm like, we may have to.
We had to do an updated summer viewing recommendation list.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, do a watch list. Um, wow, that's awesome. And Julie, I think you might also have an example of plant-based showing up on screen in a way that you found
Yeah,
inspiring.
I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite shows. It's Netflix Emily in Paris, and the actor Lucas Bravo. He plays Gabriel, the French chef and love interest of Emily. Bravo is a vegan in real life and very vocal about plant-based living and sustainability in his personal life. And he even influenced the show itself. In season three, Gabrielle serves a plant-based menu for a client's event, which became a point of contention with Gabrielle's key investor. It was made great for Netflix show, and Emily highlights the innovation of the plant-based menu and how popular it was. And I really like this Veg News actually did a really great recap of the show. And they interviewed in an interview that he did, I don't think it was for Veg News, it was for another outlet. He was stated saying, when a story is authentic, locally rooted, and human, it becomes normal. And this show did exactly that, which is awesome. And then I also want to mention we work with a lot of religious organizations focusing on sustainable food systems. We're co-hosting a webinar on Monday for LA Climate Week for an interfaith conversation with three spiritual leaders exploring the sacred connection between food, stories, rituals, and sustainability. We'll post the invite to that in the chat if anyone wants to join.
Awesome. That's amazing. And yeah, I believe Jessica from Better Food Foundation is gathering up some of these links in the chat. So one more reminder as well to please share your questions for the panelists. We'll transition to audience Q&A pretty soon. We've got a couple more questions. And if you're looking for the Q&A button, you might need to click on the little three dots that say more. I think we can also grab them from the chat, but the Q&A feature has added advantages. So please share your questions for the panelists. And I'd like to ask a question of all of you as we're kind of coming to the end of our prepared questions. What is one concrete institutional or cultural intervention or storytelling strategy, or it could be a specific project that you have worked on and had success with in the past? What is one thing that you believe is urgent and overlooked? We can go around. Maybe Carrie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, one thing, and I saw a question in the chat about this. I can talk a little bit more about it. Is that the US is seen as the breadbasket of the world, but we're actually not producing enough food to feed ourselves. And part of that is because of the poor land choices we're making. It takes a lot more land to raise cattle and livestock. And I saw that there was something about crops and like, aren't we just using up land to grow vegetables? A lot of the land is being used for feed for livestock. So it's the phrase that a group that I've worked with talks about is food, not feed, right? So if we're going to grow something, let's grow something that we can eat directly. It's a lot more efficient. It takes up a lot less land. It doesn't destroy the land in the same way that industrial agriculture does, and it's more sustainably made. And it's a lot more efficient to get calories that way, that as opposed to raising giant animals, killing them, processing them. There's also tons of land that needs to be used to feed those animals. So when you see soy crops, that's not like, oh, everyone's eating tofu, and a very small percentage of that is actually being eaten by humans. It's always to feed animals that are going to be slaughtered. This is a huge problem in the Amazon. The Amazon is being mowed down, and indigenous people are losing their territories that are supposed to be protected by the government because of this. They're burning down areas to make room for cattle and to make room to grow crops that will then feed those cattle. And it happens in the US as well. It's happening around the world. So I think that there's a national security issue in there. I think that there are different angles that don't have anything to do with whether you're a hippie or a green, person or whatever. It gets lost in the narrative, but the fact is we're just not using the limited amount of land that we have to do these things wisely. I think that's something that could be told in various creative ways, but I leave it to all you LA crew to figure out the Hollywood story behind that one. I will come see it.
I might follow up on that because I, I, I love the way that you stated it. And I always tend to tell folks, I eat what you eat eats. And that just in that simple sentence, you realize that if we removed or just didn't breed the trillions, and yes, trillions, if you include fish, which we absolutely should, because I think if we empty our oceans, we all know that that's the end. The facts are on our side, as Cyle said earlier, and the thing I love the most is that the power is in our hands. I feel like the power is in my hands, considering that animal ag is about 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. I love that I can make a choice for the planet. I'm an athlete, so 6 times a day. I eat a lot. I love that. I don't know. I can't maybe afford an electric car. I'll admit I'm not willing to stop traveling in airplanes. I have a really hard time figuring out some of the other ways to make a positive impact on the planet, but I know for sure I can make it on my plate every single day. And I love that we all can. And that puts, as I just said, the power in our own hands.
I can jump onto that. I love that point. And just to, I'll circle back to it. But I think, a storytelling or communication strategy that I believe is pretty urgent just because of what I see happening with my conversations with other people in this space, is a confusion around values association. So I think that there's like this inclination to chase the kinds of values and trends that the meat and dairy industry are espousing. But at the end of the day, no matter what they say, especially compared to plant-based foods, meat isn't actually healthy. It's actively harming the planet. And our systems for producing it are unprecedented in how terribly they treat animals. So as I sort of mentioned earlier, most people want to be healthy, most people want the planet to be saved, and most people I don't think want to have that kind of direct harm on, the other beings of our planet. Um, they're not rooting for the end of the world. They're not rooting for that type of thing. But disinformation is attractive because it's comfortable and it allows you to keep living the lifestyle that you have. But it's still disinformation. And, as I've said, as we've all kind of come back to, and Dotsie just said, like the facts are on our side. And I think it's somewhat of a miss to align, our plant-based messaging strategies to the like big meat strategies, ultimately when, like the facts on every one of those values and the values that most people, I believe, hold are in our favor. And with the long game, I think we can win that. The power, as Dotsie said, the power is in our hands. In some way, somehow, I believe that our resilience and with the consistency of that messaging and with like communicating those facts either directly or through the behaviors and the norms that we portray, I believe that people will seize on that.
Yeah, and I'll just add a note because I'm very action oriented and using defaults and nudges and the behavioral science is easy and possible. And I think a lot of people think that shifting to plant-based food isn't possible. Um, and we've seen it over and over and over in all of these universities, schools, hospitals. And I think our job going forward is to work with entertainment, sports, and storytellers of all kinds to move culture quietly, joyfully, and at scale to plant-rich diet. So that by the time anyone notices, it's already happened and becomes the norm. And that's why I think conversations like today are so important because I think storytellers really can bring in these rich stories to on screen that we want to see more of it. We want it to spread and be relatable and funny and sad and feel all the emotions that we feel around food and culture and race.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing all of those. We will come back with some things on the horizon for each of the panelists, but I want to make sure we have enough time to dig into some of your questions in the audience. So I think Jessica Cohen from the Better Food Foundation is going to help facilitate the audience Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Claire, and thank you to the speakers. This panel has been so inspiring. The first question we have is from Kiana, who asks, what are some key features of creating successful storytelling that is plant-focused?
I'm happy to jump in with some advice that we give. So I primarily work on unscripted television, where it can be difficult to just go in and say, "Here's the facts, change your story to, fit the facts." We're working with real people, we're in real locations. It's reality TV at the end of the day. Of course, some of it gets manipulated and produced, but we're not making it up whole cloth. But again, we give specific advice, which I think can be you can draw things from that. And one of the main things we do is we look at what's authentic and we look at what's already there or what's already being done. So if casting is like a big area where you can do this, I talked about a number of people who are showing up on screen, who are plant-based or eat mostly plant-based for various reasons. And so I think whether it's casting or character development, making sure that you're asking the right questions about that talent or that character to draw that out in a way that feels authentic. It's not necessarily just plant-based for plant-based sake. It's like, what are the other connections to that? What has made them that way? What are the other things that, the values that they have or the behaviors that they engage in that sort of align with that in a really meaningful way. So that's one thing that we do, but also like, whether you go into world building or like location selection or design, I think there's many ways to bring it in. Um, and then, sorry, I'm talking so much, but just to also kind of come back to something I said earlier, we had in Recipe for Disaster, we had the plant-based challenge, but it wasn't a plant-based show. And one thing that we run into, and we've had this conversation with network execs, is that a plant-based show is probably not, especially on like a mainstream network or a mainstream platform, probably not going to get the same size of audience as just a mainstream cooking show that isn't entirely plant-based. My preference would be everything be plant-based, and that's all we promote all the time. But I also am trying to reach as many people as possible. So I think finding those connections, even in something that isn't entirely about that, so you can reach like a mainstream audience with those values and with like, the positive messaging about how delicious it is and how great it is, finding those seamless ways in wherever the opportunity arises can be really meaningful.
And if I could add to that, when we launched, thank you, Kyle. When we launched the Rewild Your Fridge campaign, we did it with local partners on the ground. We work with over 600 partners around the world and many indigenous communities. So this was an indigenous community, the Rama and Creole people in Nicaragua. And we helped fund and promote a documentary that ended up being a world award-winning documentary that we took to many festivals. It premiered at Mountain Film, which has all different kinds of documentaries. So it wasn't just, oh, here's a plant-based documentary, because it actually wasn't about plants. It was about a man and his family in the Rama people, and them protecting their land and their way of life that had been promised to them and agreed upon. And you got to see firsthand the challenge of going out and talking to people who were just taking over areas that they had no business taking over. And it was all because there was money behind it and there was illegal activity behind it. And there was a traceability factor where some of that meat is then ending up in US grocery stores. And it's kind of like it made people think, oh, I don't really know where it comes from. So it wasn't so much like, oh, everyone should walk away from this eating plants only. It was a story about a family, about a way of life, about a political situation in a country. It was a story with many other facets. And obviously, we took the Rewild Your Fridge part of it, ran with it because that's something that we care about as an organization. But it was a beautiful film about real people and the struggles that they've gone through.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle and Carrie. I like what you both said about organically and authentically drawing out those plant-based storylines or characters within the bigger picture of whatever story you are trying to tell. Our next question comes from an anonymous attendee who asks, how do we elevate this story while being inclusive of all communities and recognizing plant-based can feel out of reach for many, and balancing the responsibility of individuals when it feels like there are bigger systemic challenges?
I can speak to the part about inclusive communities and feeling out of reach for many. And, there's always the stigma plant-based eating is expensive. I like to point to one of our partners, Afro Vegan Society. Follow them on YouTube. They have an insane library of $5 and less delicious, tasty plant-based meals. And you'll see that across the board. Beans are very affordable and rich in protein and fiber. We're seeing, increase in many animal products. Eggs. Has anyone been to the grocery store lately? They are not affordable. And we're seeing that across the board. And I noticed a comment from Kathleen, which it didn't mention, but there's a school district, Cherry Creek, that they owned their own bakery, and they took a look at what they were serving the K through 12 students. And it was all these baked goods. They took the milk out of it, which wasn't even real milk. It was like milk powder and eggs, and switched it with plant-based ingredients, soy oil, and applesauce, which actually made the baked goods more spongy. They save over $13,000 a year by this simple switch, and no students, parents, no one noticed. So I like to debunk when everyone always says plant-based eating is expensive. It's not. It's actually pretty accessible. And then the other accessibility thing, we tell cafeterias this all the time. Of the 9 big allergens that universities are having to deal with, if you serve plant-based by default, it eliminates 4 out of those 9 allergens. So that's making the food more inclusive to more people.
Mhm. Yeah. I interviewed the great Harvard researcher Walter Willett 2 days ago for the Switch for Good podcast, and asked him this exact question, really, what is, not the exact question, but in the lane of questioning you are asking, what is the most nutritious, cheapest plant-based meal that anyone on the planet has access to? Food deserts, all the places where people might not have access. And he said it is a peanut butter sandwich, which he reminded me a peanut is a legume full of fiber. It's not a nut. Uh, on on whole grain bread with a very light dollop of jam if you want. He said, I don't like ultra processed sugar or processed sugar of any kind, so make it a natural kind, and a carrot. And that is 71 cents. I was like, there it is. I've been eating, well, just been 2 days, but that's a really good snack, and I've been enjoying that. So keep it simple, right? Kiss.
Yeah, thank you, Dotsie and Julie, for highlighting how easy it can be and affordable it can be to eat plant-based and how inclusive it is overall. I'm going to pass it back to Claire to ask our final question, but thank you for everyone who posted their questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica, for facilitating. And yeah, thank you for great questions. Thank you, everybody, for being engaged in this conversation. We're going to go around one more time. I would love for everybody to share what's on the horizon for you. Where can people find you? How can people get involved? And Dotsie, I'd love to start with you. I have one additional question for you if you're willing to share a little bit. Something on the horizon for all of LA is the Olympics coming up in 2028. We have an Olympian here with us. And if you're willing to share, I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the efforts to get plant-based to be a part of that huge global moment.
Yeah, there are so many more athletes who have gone plant-based, I'll say, in the last 8 years, really unlocking their true potential and their true power by eating plant-based. Yeah, so that's for me been very exciting to see, because I made the switch to fully plant-based 2 years before Olympic Games, and everyone told me I was gonna well, someone told me I was going to die, but I mean, that's when we really knew nothing back in 2010. They said, there's no way you'll make it. You won't be able to grow muscle, gain muscle, and be strong enough. And I got stronger and faster and better. And yeah, stood on the podium, the oldest athlete in history in my discipline on plants. So LA Olympics has an awesome opportunity, and it's not just me, it's Juli, and we've got, I think it's like 9 organizations, Juli, and we've been working as a collective on Zoom just like this for a while. And the opportunity that LA has is to make sure that all their food procurement for the games, for the spectators, not so much the athletes, they're expecting about 17 million spectators to descend on Los Angeles. There's only about 10,000 athletes in a Summer Olympic Games. So it's for the spectators to try and be excited by and enjoy. They are very focused on making sure that the food comes from all of the different populations in and around Los Angeles, which are from all over the world, as we know. And we have asked them to make sure that it's a 60% plant-based food. And I'm just going to say we're going to get there, Juli. We're just going to state it right now on this call. We're going to get there. They are very open. They are very been very hip to listening to the reasoning and how that might happen. As you can imagine, feeding 17 million people. I mean, it's just makes me, it's like cloudy head when they start talking about how many carrots, how much peanut butter, how much bread. It's just staggering. So it's a big lift just to feed 17 million people. But they're excited. I believe they are excited. They sound excited to look towards that percentage being plant-based for the Olympics.
And I would just want to add shout out to Dotsie and Maggie Baird for really spearheading this move to influence them to 60% plant-based, and the other organizations that are working with us on it, like Greener by Default, Mercy for Animals, Support and Feed. So it's a really exciting effort, and the relationships are already there. All of these organizations are talking to these food service providers and working with them and educating them. So we have under 2 years. So fingers crossed, but I think LA will be the place that it'll happen.
Yeah, I do too.
And I'll just throw in next for us. We're attending Food Day in West Hollywood, the city of West Hollywood, who serves plant-based by default because of their new policy. They're hosting Food Day in Plummer Park, so come and join us. It's plant-based treaties event in partnership with SoCal Veg Fest. It's happening all day on Sunday. We're also hosting that webinar with the faith leaders on Monday. Jessica will post those in the chat and love to see you there.
I'll just very quickly wrap up by saying we have a couple of events coming up this month. We have our Unscripting the Narrative presentation, which we're offering to anybody in the industry who wants to take it completely free the day after Earth Day. And we are also doing a panel with the TV Academy, speaking with a number of producers from unscripted TV about how sustainability is showing up in their shows on April 30th. So reach out to hello@realityofchange.com or visit realityofchange.com and we can send you those details.
Yep. And I'm coming to LA next week. Excited to see everybody for the Music Sustainability Alliance Summit. So Rewild will be there. I'll be there with some of my colleagues. And then we'll be back in LA for the Hollywood Climate Summit, which is a great event. So looking forward to that as well. You can find Rewild at Rewild on all the social channels and rewild.org. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you.
Amazing. This has been so great. Thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing your time and your insights and expertise. This has been a really awesome conversation. And thank you to everybody for coming out. Tons of great links shared in the chat. I believe we will be sending out a follow-up email with a bunch of those resources and where to find folks. You can find Grist at Grist on all the things. And thank you so much, everybody. Let's do this.